Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us in this first of 3 panel discussions on the case for a residential drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre here in Dubbo and a drug court here in Dubbo. And thank you to the Dubbo Regional Council for bringing us all together here in this room at the Dubbo Chambers and at home or wherever you're watching for us to speak to this forum. My name is Joe Kellaway. I'm a barrister practising mainly in the criminal law. My first job was as a solicitor out here in Dubbo in 2005. And since then I've worked in the West and Far West New South Wales regions, instructed by the Legal Aid Commission and the Aboriginal Legal Service. And I'm so pleased, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to introduce to you tonight 4 panellists who over the next hour will personify for us what a battle with addiction and adversity actually involves, and to remind us why now more than ever before the case has been made for a rehabilitation centre here in Dubbo and a drug court here in Dubbo. I'll introduce my panel from my left to right, so your right to left as you're watching. Cyrena Harris. She's a local Tubbergar Miriwarri woman who, through her own lived experience, is empowering members of her community to seek change. Cyrena is studying a Bachelor of Social Work to ensure that she has the tools to help those who are in need. Sitting to my left is Joe Williams. He's a proud Wiradjuri Walgaloo man, born in Cowra and raised in Wagga. He played in the NRL, Souths, Penrith and Canterbury, importantly Penrith, before switching to professional boxing in 2009. He's a 2 times WBF World Junior Welterweight Champion and recently won the WBC Asia Continental title. You probably wouldn't know it unless he told you himself, but for most of his life he has battled with suicidal ideation and bipolar disorder, and he will talk a bit more about that and his program, The Enemy Within. To my right is Jeff Amatto. He's a proud Wiradjuri man. He grew up in Wellington. He co-founded the Brothers for Recovery. He openly describes himself as a man who is an addict and a prisoner, and who is a man who has fought through to sobriety, and who is a man who now passionately helps others to do the same. And lastly, Anne-Marie Chandler. She's a loving and caring mother of 3. She runs a Digi Connect here in Dubbo. I would have described it from what I've seen as a mentoring service that is concerned with securing the independence to First Nations people and to cut the dependence on welfare and connect, support, consult, mentor participants into employment, self-reliance and into independence. And we welcome Anne-Marie Chandler tonight. Indeed, I ask you to welcome all of our panellists tonight. But before we commence in proper, could I please invite Riverbank Frank Doolan to lead us in the Welcome to Country.
Thank you, brother. Can you hear me? Okay. Thanks, people. What I have to say won't take very long. I feel a bit strange standing here before you tonight. I didn't really think that this night would ever happen, but we're part of the way now into our quest to get suitable facilities for this community, and looking at the panel here and the calibre of people on the panel and in the room just tells me that it's going to be a good night, you know, and we're all going to be involved in a discussion about something this city really needs. As I understand it, so far we have the support of our local council, Dubbo City Regional Council, and I thank you for that. I thank you most of all, Dubbo City Regional Council, for your social conscience in this matter. thank you too to the feds who have given us $3 million towards this here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're just waiting on the state government, and hopefully once they sort out the other stuff they need to, they might see fit to show a bit of money our way, because as Brother Joey on the panel reminded us earlier, a facility once established in this place won't just serve Dubbo. It will serve people in Western New South Wales, and in particular my Indigenous brothers and sisters. There will be a facility which hopefully will do what it needs to do, that is, help people to heal with dignity. So, yeah, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all. I might add also that there are a number of other Wiradjuri people in the room here, strong Wiradjuri people at that. To each and every one of you, I extend a special hello, and I say to you that tonight is going to be a good night for us, mob, and you're going to do us proud. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks very much, Frank. Before we open to the panel generally, I intended to address a few background facts and lay the platform for you, and then we'll open to our panel on a number of topics for discussion, and we'll also invite questions from the audience and from wherever you're listening from as well. This is one of 3 Q&As between now and Tuesday, 17 November next. 17 November next being the night of the state budget. The line that this community needs to read in the state budget for 2021 is this, quote, $2 million toward construction of a 15-bed rehabilitation facility and an 8-bed withdrawal detoxification facility in Dubbo Regional Local Council government area, and $2.7 million annually toward the ongoing operation of this facility. The business case for it, that has also been done unusually by this very council, can be found at www.dubbo.newsouthwales.gov.au/Dubbo needs a rehab. It's about 20 pages long. It takes about 15 minutes to read. Once you've read it, you'll wonder why on earth this had not been done years before. The figures contained in the report have been well known for years. If the state is wanting other people to chip in some of the money, it's been done. The Commonwealth have now pledged $3 million towards the construction. If you're looking for the land to build on it, that's been done. The council has dedicated the appropriate parcel of land to construct it. If you need an inquiry to tell you to do it, look no further than the 2017-2018 Upper House Inquiry Report, Provision of Drug Rehabilitation Services in Regional, Rural and Remote New South Wales. Many people in this room would remember that inquiry because they participated throughout a lot of the public hearings. There were 12 recommendations in that report. Recommendation 5 was that the New South Wales Government pilot a drug court in Dubbo in parallel with an increase in rehabilitation services for the area. That was, quote, supported in principle by the Minister for Health on the 17th of January 2019. There was then a Special Commission of Inquiry into the Drug Ice report published in January of this year that specifically recommended the expansion and resourcing of a drug court to priority regional areas together with appropriate support for local services. Of course, what was called the ICE inquiry reminded the government of the previous recommendations and others that dated back to 2008. It quoted Detective Acting Superintendent Cook from New South Wales Police Force, who said reviews of the success of the drug courts have shown they are effective in reducing the amount of reoffending. Anything that reduces reoffending would be strongly supported by the New South Wales Police. The table is set and everyone has come to dinner, everyone except just yet our own state government. The drug court in this state started in Parramatta in 1999. 20 years later, Dubbo has no drug court. Dubbo has no residential rehabilitation facility. Dubbo has no specific detoxification facility or no compulsory drug treatment program. The inequity is palpable. ICE does not discriminate. Alcohol does not prefer one person over another. And to illustrate the point before we move into general discussion, say any of you have a son or a daughter or a parent or a friend, and as they start to leave home, they become involved with the wrong crowd. And before you can stop it, they develop a particular addiction, and somehow they become a stranger to you. They change over time, and they are not the person that you once knew. Small infringements begin to occur, convictions and fines or bonds, bail hearings. Eventually they find themselves charged with a serious offence and facing a serious custodial term that is wholly related to their addiction. If you were in Parramatta, you would be referred to the drug court. You would be referred intensively to residential rehabilitation. A magistrate or a judge in Parramatta can defer that person into getting treatment. A magistrate or a judge in Dubbo has no such power, because there is no such power here in Dubbo to do that. The law of New South Wales that applies to all of us says that imprisonment is the place of last resort. That applies to everyone. That means that a magistrate or a judge has to look at all other options before they sentence someone to a period of imprisonment. In Parramatta, they have other options before they take that last step. In Dubbo, they don't exist. And I've run a number of cases of similar facts in different parts of the state where my submissions in the Sydney CBD or in Parramatta are towards a compulsory drug treatment program and the appropriateness of it. Whereas when I appear out here in Dubbo or in the Western region, I'm talking about how long the non-parole period should be. And that injustice is impalpable, it is insufferable, and it cannot continue. This council has put together the business case. We should read it. The federal government has put forward money. The land has been put forward. Everything is practically tied up in string, excuse me, to fix this problem, which really goes to the fabric of our society. Get online to Dubbo Needs a Rehab and sign the petition. As I say, this is one of 3 discussions between now and budget night. That's the background with respect to the inquiries and the work that has been done so far. But to our panel, and probably enough from me for now, Jeff, Amatto, I might go to you first. The destruction that living with an addiction has on a person and on a person's family, on a person's loved ones, to give us your own personal experience of that.
Yeah, I can only speak about my own personal journey about this question. The destruction I had on my family, my daughter, the ones that loved me the most was all I was doing to them was mentally draining. I lost a relationship with my daughter because of my addiction. So that means that still to today, she hasn't had the privilege to meet her dad. And this is the kind of stuff that the destruction it has. That's the kind of situations I was putting my family in.
And what sort of age were you when the addiction really took hold?
About 17. 17, 18, my addiction was at its best.
And you say on your own website, you've well published in this area that you did spend time incarcerated. And how was that experience for you? How old were you at the time, and what was the separation between yourself and your family?
About 19, 20 when I first got introduced to the system. And I suppose the disconnection from me and my family was pretty much the disconnection I had with my family due to my drug and alcohol abuse was very rarely I got to spend time with my family.
And the kind of intervention, looking back, if you're speaking to yourself as a 19, 20-year-old person, and you do that now, you speak to young men,
Yep.
In terms of which way they need to be directed.
Yep.
To.
Yeah, looking back at my life, I wished there just wasn't the support I needed. The places, like you said in your speech earlier, that should have been the last resort, jail, but the sad reality was it was the first choice for magistrates back then in Wellington. It wasn't the last resort, but it was the first one. It was the easier choice, and that's how it was.
Which many people describe imprisonment as a place to start a career in crime, let alone finish it. But you were lucky enough to start to face your own addictions.
Yeah. Well, like I say, in prison, the stuff I've seen in prison, it's not rehabilitating our people. When you're witnessing inmates line up, in a line of 20 to use the same syringe, it's when you're seeing inmates, regurgitating methadone to use that kind of stuff with other inmates. This is the kind of stuff that's happening in prisons. It's not rehabilitating our people. It's doing is adding trauma to the trauma. We're getting sent to prison, with untreated trauma, untreated alcoholism, untreated addiction, untreated mental health. It's not helping our people. It's not helping our people and non-Indigenous people as well.
And it's a well-known fact about the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in custody.
That's right. And me personally, the only way I could heal as an Indigenous man was I had to be introduced to a cultural-based rehab. That's where I came back in contact with my culture. It's where I started my healing. Was at a cultural-based rehab, and that's my Facebook page is more cultural rehabs, less jails. Is to travel around and let people know the way I healed. I couldn't heal in jail.
Anne-Marie, if I could move down to you, and I hope that I introduced you properly, and what I distilled from the work that you do is that you're very strong in terms of helping people to stop their dependence in terms of welfare or other dependence, but to gain independence for themselves. What reflections do you have on these kinds of facilities, and how do you sort of see that they might have a role in your clientele and your role that you do here in the community in Dubbo?
Okay, well, I guess coming on the panel tonight, I considered what I was going to talk about before I came, and whether I was going to talk about my own lived experience or lived experience through work or people that I know. I've had addiction as well in my teens, and you never overcome it, you learn to live with it. So there's a big difference between overcoming something. I think people have that in their mind that they're going to do this and they're going to get better and the problem's going to be solved. It doesn't work like that. You learn to live with it. And I think that that's something that we need to change in our minds when we talk about it, because addiction is something that you actually live with for the rest of your life. So you work out whether it becomes an addiction that's destructive or one that's creative and positive. And that's the turning point that I've found in my life and with a lot of people I work with as well. Addiction comes a lot from the vicious cycle of poverty. So when you're stuck in it, you don't know any other way, you don't know any way out, the people you know are all involved and you've got nowhere to go. When you're out here and you live in these communities and you're with the people you've got, if nobody has access to rehab, nobody talks about it, nobody knows about it, how can you get there? Like, it's something that we need to create awareness for. It's something that we need to understand what it is and be able to say, Jeff, you went to rehab, that's mad. You know, it's just out here, it's really, really needed. I can't express how much. We've been working with people that we're trying to get them to go away to go to rehab. They don't want to. They want to be here at home in their community.
And I might return to that topic of the importance of having a centre here and the significance of that. And I will return to that as a separate topic. But in terms of living with an addiction...
So if you're on the outside and you're looking in, sorry, I'm just going to... you can see the full-blown destruction, but what you're not seeing is the finer details of it. So you're not seeing how your relationships are absolutely torn to pieces. So you might have a mother and a father and a sister, but you don't, because all you have is people that you're constantly fighting with and arguing with and battling with, and it's destructive within itself. So rehab gives you the opportunity to get away from all of that, to have a space where people are able to love you and care for you and love you to good health, because you can't fight someone to good health.
But still not be disconnected from
your
family and your community.
Yeah, you still have to be close by. You still have to know that those people love you. You still have to know that you've got something to come back to. Going away, often they'll leave because they're not near people they love. If you're away, a long way away, like up at Parramatta or something like that, your family's out here, not everyone has the ability, due to the vicious cycle of poverty, to go and visit that person when they can. So they're alone, they're isolated from everyone they know and love.
While they're trying to get better. That's right.
For me, I actually did a program here in Dubbo. So I had access, a 6-week program here, I had access to family. I could still see them. I went home a couple of weekends. So it was good for me to be able to do that. When you're sending someone away, they're scared. Yeah.
Emery, you mentioned the importance of acknowledging addiction and being brave enough to speak openly about it. And I think, Joe Williams, that's where I might bring you in, where you've... your work in the field in terms of, I think you've titled a lot of your work Battling the Enemy Within, and the importance for you leading such a high-profile professional existence while at the same time, and a very successful career, while at the same time dealing with a completely destructive condition.
Yeah, look, it's there's many layers to it. And you look at, whilst talking about what mental health issues are within community or within an individual, for me the mask was the alcohol and drugs as well. So recovering addict, and speak about my life of addiction quite openly as well. And the fact that, you know, the core root and causes of addiction are things like disconnection. You know, when we look at what are the causes, without doubt there's biological and genetic dispositions to addiction, but when we look at the core root of a lot of issues that are happening, there's loads of work done around the world with this, talking about the lack of connection. You know, when you have lack of connection, and this talks to Anne-Marie's point as well, is going away from the bush as Aboriginal people, which is, you know, a high percentage of people incarcerated are Aboriginal people. The spiritual disconnection of where we are. You know, whilst we don't get homesick when we're away from home, it's our spirit that gets called home. So when we're trying to heal and we're in those type of circumstances, particularly off country, it adds to the added noise that goes on in between our heads, which then compounds, again, those genetic dispositions and disconnection, lack of family, lack of self, lack of purpose, all of those sort of things. So we're looking at an ongoing cycle of what actually causes the addiction, where you're looking at a centre, a facility or rehabilitation centre that's here locally. And again, I mentioned earlier, off camera, that Dubbo is the gateway to the West. You know, there are so many people that don't have access financially to be able to travel to the city, but again, spiritually they've been dragged home as well. You know, so there's many layers as to why the positives surround getting a rehab here. You know, if we are true about wanting to heal people, we will look at what heals people. You know, when locking people up, you know, I've written many articles about it. We're locking people up for trauma and going away, as Jeff said, getting locked up to be further trauma perpetrated to us. You know, it's an ongoing vicious cycle of, I know guys that haven't been addicts, gone into prison and then become addicts in prison. You know, so we're looking at an ongoing cycle that isn't healing anyone. There is no rehabilitation. And when we look at, as Jeff said, culturally appropriate services and rehabilitation centres, we're looking at healing people. It's not fixing it. It's about healing. You know, it's about filling that void or filling up that hole that is the deep and utter pain for, and speaking on behalf of myself first and foremost, but as an Aboriginal man, it's the deep and ongoing yearning of disconnection that is causing a lot of our problems. So when we look at rehabilitation, what's going to rehabilitate us? It's being on country is most definitely going to do that. So it's about healing the spirit, which then forms a safer space and cultural base to be able to heal the spirit of a person, which then you can start to have a look at the trauma addiction issues that are going on within the individual.
One of the inquiries noted, and I don't think we all really appreciate this, but the reality of some of the things that you've been saying, some people who could go to residential rehabilitation somewhere else in the country or in the state won't do it because they're leaving country. That's the thing that's keeping them back, and that's one of the observations that have been made.
These are all researched and reported documents.
Yes.
You know, so it isn't your opinion, or it isn't my opinion as a recovering addict. This is all researched and out there for the public to view. And the fact that it is well known and documented that the disconnection for Aboriginal people of being off country is going to inhibit a healing process.
And I think, Cyrena, that's where I might bring you in.
Hello.
So, your last, I started with you first and came back to you last.
Thank you.
But as a Tubbo Miriwarri woman, you might have some different reflections on some of the things that Joe's been sharing with us.
Sure. I was hoping I'd get asked a question, but that's okay, that's fine. So I completely agree with what the panel has spoken about at the moment, and we've all got different views and different aspects of our lives where we've come into touch or gone through, walked that path ourselves. So as a community member of Dubbo, I've lived here for over 25 years. I myself have walked that path, unfortunately, and so I have a similar story to Jeff. I have worked extremely hard to find myself, and I have put the work in. So there is some, great community members that are willing to support a rehab and people recovering in the community, and the response I have had is just phenomenal. I don't think a single person has been anything but supportive to me, and I'm very thankful. Also thankful to Council for taking on this huge thing that's going on to get a rehab and get people well in Dubbo. As you were told, I'm a direct descendant in Dubbo. So I, have a connection to country, and I came home, and as Joe said, I came home. I grew up on the Central Coast, so I came home, and I believe it was to get well and find myself and to heal. So I have direct contact with the public every day and community, and I still walk in the same path, the same streets, rub shoulders with people in addiction, also that are, suffering from depression or, mental health, DV, people that have been in and out of jails in the community. So it is, 100% what these guys have been telling you is the truth. And we need support in Dubbo. We are the hub. Everybody comes through Dubbo. Everybody is, this place needs support from the state government. I cannot implore the state government enough to look at what is going on here, statistics. If you want to look at it, look at the report, go right ahead. I ask you to do that. So I just want to let you know that my children now have a mother back. My mother has a daughter back. My friends have a friend back. So I just want to speak briefly about the problems that are and issues currently at the moment, and I'm aware of the time. I'm sorry. So the struggle for confronting people in getting help at the moment, I speak of an 18-year-old girl, young woman, who only a few days ago approached the doctor's surgery with her nan and was given a few pills and sent on her way. She wanted help there and then. She was turned away and told to come back at a later date to get a referral. So my heart goes out to this young lady who is a family member that I hope never walks the path that I walked. And that was a long walk. I believe that there definitely needs to be a rehab here. I myself have, attended a few rehabs in my time and different services. I have had to go out of town. I've had to go far, far away from home. And at that time when I was unwell, it was probably one of the worst things that I had to go through and traumatised me even worse than what going to rehab itself would have done. I was no longer in contact with family, friends, or country. I've spoken to different people in the community, friends, family, and they have told me about different things that they have gone through with their family members. Some have gone as far as Sydney, some have gone as far as Canberra. Some have gone as far as, I'm looking for the name, Kempsey. You've got nans, you've got pops fighting for their families, fighting for their grandchildren. The people that are suffering in this community are not just people on the dole. They are not just people, Aboriginal people. They are of all walks of life, all talks of life, and all colours of life. They are of all stature in life. Everybody and anybody can be affected. The nearest rehab facility has 16 beds, and the wait for detox is approximately a month. This is a non-Indigenous clinical type situation. Unfortunately, it is not what a lot of our community need. Our community can heal here on country. We have a loving community, a supportive, structure of elders, of, services, people that have walked the walk are like these people on the panel at the moment. Some of the waiting lists go up to 6 months, which I have endured myself. Some people relapse and die during this time. Some people are also suffering mental health illnesses, so there is a lot of different things that could make up what an addict or what an alcoholic is. Those are the underlying things that come into play when people use or drink. People in this town are poly addicts, in saying that they have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4 different things that they will use at a time. There is not a lot of help. I've been through this myself. I ask for you all to come together, please, and create a platform together to work towards this rehab and be solid on it for these people who deserve a second chance. These people come from outlying towns: Brewarrina, Burke, Lightning Ridge, Walgett, Warren, as far as down south, Wagga Wagga. Everybody utilises Dubbo, and I have had the pleasure of knowing these people, and they do deserve help. They do deserve quality services. They do deserve the help and the healing that Dubbo and Tubbergar land can offer. So I say to you that I ask you to go online and fill out the, what is it called?
Sure.
The petition that is online.
That is online. It's the Dubbo Needs a Rehab.
Exactly.
So,
I ask you all to get online, please, and get behind us. Our community is worth it. We are worth it. So thank you.
Cyrena, you started to remind people for me. Then I was going to do that.
No worries.
Get online, sign the petition, sign the pledge, read the program, Dubbo Needs a Rehab, which is www.dubbo.newsouthwales.gov.au, Dubbo Needs a Rehab. And Cyrena, many of the things that you were saying for you personally have certainly been reflected in the business case as well that's been put together by council, and the references that have been that form the basis of that business case are contained in the report. So please get online and read it. Please get online and sign the petition. But one of the striking lines, Cyrena, if I respectfully say,
Sure.
was that you had to come home to heal.
Yep.
And if I might, if we could add to that, what we are saying in Dubbo is that we need to stay home to heal. Yes. We need to stay in this region, and we need to remember that Dubbo services well over 120,000 people in this region, and it is a massive region that goes across Western New South Wales, and people such as yourself and the panel members, their experience is they need to be here to get through that process.
Yes.
And as I think Joe Williams, you were saying, that is an added burden on a burden itself in terms of dealing with addiction. And I was going to go to you, but I'm not. I'm going to go to Jeff first. The coming home to heal, of course, you can't do that if you're facing a non-parole period of a number of years. And this is where I want to bring in a bit of discussion with respect to the drug court, where someone in circumstances where they're facing court, if you're facing a few years in terms of a non-parole period, you don't get any choice where you go. It's, with respect to your classification, you can be moved all over the state. What effect did effectively not only the incarceration, but the fact that you were moved through our corrective services, Was that something that was helping rehabilitation, which is what corrective services is supposed to do, in your experience?
Moving from jail to jail.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was tough in that sense because getting no visits, no, mum wasn't coming, my partner wasn't coming, and we heard it here on the panel today. It's our people, we struggle as it is to live. The sad reality is, as Indigenous people, we're the poorest culture in our own country, and for my mum to travel to Sydney, for my ex-partner to travel to Sydney, I knew if I went to Sydney I wasn't getting no visits, and that itself took its toll on me mentally. Knowing I wasn't getting no visits, my daughter wasn't coming visit, and it was a big reason why me being down Sydney in them prisons is why I suppose I've lost the connection with my daughter, because my partner couldn't bring her down there like she could when I was in Wellington prison, So it had its big toll on me. The toll it had on me is I lost connection with my daughter. So to go straight to the point, that's the effect it done.
If there's a fork in the road, it would be your sentence hearing, and from my perspective, the difference on your life if you're sitting before a magistrate who is exercising the jurisdiction of the drug court, as opposed to the magistrate exercising the common jurisdiction of the Wellington local court. How do you see men such as yourself coming up against one or the other if you were directed into the way of residential rehabilitation, intensive rehabilitation of the kind that we're petitioning for tonight?
Well, I suppose it comes down to common sense. All my charges were related to drugs and alcohol. It took a lot of misery, a lot of years of misery and pain before they jerried on and said, well, jail's not working for you. All my charges was drug related charges, alcohol related charges. So I was pretty much in and out of the system because of the drug and alcohol related.
Which has to be recognised if you're not going to reoffend, or if you're not going to find yourself in the same problem. We call it the criminogenic factor. If the addiction is driving the conduct, then the addiction needs to be fixed.
That's right. And that's where I suppose I was privileged enough to get introduced to a rehabilitation centre off country, and still to today I'm nearly 11 years clean and sober, but I find that me not being on country, I've got to come back home to keep healing. I come home at least 4 or 5 times a year. It's a part of my healing process. I went to the rehabilitation centre down on the Central Coast, but that was after a lot of years of misery and pain, because there was no rehabilitation on my own country. So, yeah, privileged enough to be introduced to that, but I know exactly what Joey and Sister Girls were saying. We're spiritually connected to this country. We need to be on our own country to heal.
Can I just say something in relation to what Jeff was saying real quick? My experience is that non-Indigenous people in this community and surrounding communities as well also have a connection to country. This is their home as well. So I believe that, Dubbo has a lot to offer in they connect to country as well, and it is it is a place that is able to help heal you, and it can just ease your soul. So those people also have a huge connection to Dubbo.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Cyrena. And postcode justice affects everyone, not just. And we need to know your own reasons why this facility needs to be local, but it affects us all across the board and across our community. And I'm pleased to say that we have been sent in a question from Celia Hutchinson for the panel. Does the panel have any concerns that the rehab will be at capacity when it opens? Do you hope it will be easier to expand, grow it once it has been built and the success stories start flowing? Or are we going to be in this struggle with government again and again? Also, is our clinic going to be a mix of clinical care and Indigenous care to cater for everyone? Joe Williams, if we see this start, I suppose, do we see it grow, and do we see the grow get supported along the way?
Look, I'm not privy to the infrastructure plan as far as building and growing to start with, but what I will say is that we're at a place at the moment where we still need more money to get it. You know, so whilst it's great to have plans to be able to grow, we still need the state government, you know, next month when they hand down their budget, to come to the party for this. You know, it's we all have pipe dreams to be able to have, you know, fantastic centres and to one thing that's hugely important is to have the knowledge around the difference between healing away from home and healing at home. You know, particularly for Aboriginal people, we're connected to, and as you were saying, this non-Indigenous people as well, we're connected to a place. You know, and that place of who we are, it forms our identity, particularly as Aboriginal people. So spiritually, we need to be connected to that place. Now, it just makes sense. Like, sometimes we make things so much harder than we need to, just because we've got checks and balances to form, where the feds have come to the party. Now, you know, the invitation's there to come to the state government to start to have a look at what really looks like serious change in communities. You know, because as it is with someone who gets incarcerated here and gets locked up at Wello and then gets shipped off after a couple of weeks, and then does a 3-month sentence, and you as a barrister be more privy to the facts and the research around this, is that it's a revolving door. You know, we go in for small small crimes that get people locked up for, you know, 3 months sentences. They come out for 3 months and go back in. You know, it shows you that the system as it is isn't working. You know, so what we're here for tonight, like, let's not beat around the bush of what we're here for. We're here to advocate for the fact that we want a place that people can, you know, not be shipped off country. It's not working. You know, and if we want to make impacting change over generations, and we don't need to even go into the closing the gap stats. You know, if we're serious about that sort of stuff, health disparity, incarceration rates, if the government is serious about that sort of stuff, they'll take this conversation serious. Because again, failed closing the gap report after failed closing the gap report, it's not working. You know, so let's start to have a look at some serious impacting change over, you know, that could form generations. And going back to the question, if you see success in something, there is a chance for that success to grow. So if you see success in the infrastructure or programming or the facility that's built, then you're going to see it want to grow. People are going to want to replicate that. You know, so it's about forming those environments first.
And I think also to finish that question, that the economic case is there for it as well. Even if you weren't listening to all of the matters that we've raised on a pure numbers counting basis, if you have a facility like this that redirects people rather than the recidivism or going back in the revolving door in a correctional facility, that costs the state an enormous amount of money in itself.
It costs taxpayers money.
Yeah.
It costs taxpayers millions a year.
And I think the answer to the question is once you see that recidivism reduce and the progress being made and the rehabilitation on foot, it would be quite a mad treasurer to not continue to support and expand this kind of project. And perhaps one day we'll be wondering how we ever lived without it in this region.
I think you just have to take a look at the panel here we've got tonight. So you've got 4 people sitting here in front of you who at some stage in their life have been affected by some sort of addiction. We all could be people that could be still criminalised, still involved in the criminal justice system, but we aren't. And the reason why we aren't is because we've had access to some sort of rehabilitation. And in some way it is dramatically impacted on our lives in a positive way, so much that we're willing to sit up here in front of everyone else and go live and everything else and put our heart on our sleeve and say, Dubbo needs this. If someone sitting out there with the money and the ability to provide that centre here isn't willing to do that, then they need to question who they are and why they're not doing that. We need a rehab here. We need our mob, our people, our citizens of this city and the surrounding towns to be able to access that here. There's no doubt about it. You can't go chucking money around building jails, juvenile justice systems to criminalise people and keep them on the roller coaster, but not provide them with the access to be able to improve, heal and change their future opportunities.
Improve all people's, like in communities, way of life as well. It's not just an individual who gets locked up, it's improving an individual who would be sent away, is coming out, rehabilitating to be a better person, which is going to be a better person in community. Exactly. Right, which then affects and impacts the community on so many different levels.
Yes.
So everyone's winning.
It's providing jobs.
Most
people
definitely.
manning that centre, running programs there, working there. It's providing economic growth within our community as well.
The construction itself.
Yep.
We hear every night about all this money for construction across the country. This is what we want to get built. And I think that's so powerfully put, Anne-Marie. Thank you. We sort of forget putting this panel together that's made of people such as yourself and yourselves who are the example, who can say this is what we need. We are going to start to run out of time soon. This is one of 3 talks. Get to Dubbo Needs a Rehab and fill out the petition. But we can take some comments, questions or queries from the floor if we can, and I can invite back Riverbank Frank Doolan, who you might need to come to a microphone, sir.
The woman who asked the question, she asked if the panel sees this facility as being just a black facility, culturally appropriate, or do you see it as being able to cater for all the needs of all people in this area? Can the panel answer that question, please?
Okay, I think Aboriginal people are overly represented within the criminal justice system and with addiction and things like that. It's proven that rehabs with a cultural basis to them, like what Jeff talks about, are quite successful. I know that they are. I think that anybody that goes to those rehabs see the benefit in it. It's not, I don't think where anyone is asking for just a black rehab. And I think that that's something, Aboriginal culture is a very inclusive culture. It's a loving culture, a loving way of life. And it's time that we stopped having that separation and shut down with that and acceptance, because it is one of the most beautiful things in the world to be involved in. And definitely any sort of healing centre is valuable, whether it has an Indigenous component to it or not.
And I think I might get all the panellists to each express an answer about that, Jeff, as well.
Yeah, me personally, no, I don't think it should be just Indigenous. It's got to be a community-driven based rehabilitation centre. You know, it can't be tarnished just as Aboriginals with the problem. You know, the drugs and alcohol doesn't discriminate against black, white or brindle. You know, the only way this program's going to work if it's up and going is if it's community-driven. We all walk together as one.
I think it's also important to not be blind to the fact that we are overrepresented and the fact that we do make up high percentage numbers within the incarceration system. So to formulate a program based on an assimilation process of the last 230 years hasn't worked, and has probably ended us up in prison. So with the high population of incarcerated of Aboriginal people, First Nation people, there's got to be a large component. If it's made up of Aboriginal people who are inside the doors, then as far as the rehabilitation process, and I'm sure Jeff will admit to this quite, and has done quite openly, it's that culture and the connection to, as I said, a lot of research points back to connection to people, purpose and place of who you are as an individual. When you have lack of connection, then you search for other means to find connection, which unfortunately is in alcohol and drugs in a lot of communities. We need to find that connection, whilst if the success rates of a culturally based rehabilitation centre for a high percentage of people, there needs to be a percentage that relates to the cultural healing of Aboriginal people. Because again, 230 years hasn't worked to heal us. It's only further perpetrated trauma that was initially perpetrated. So, speaking to the blunt facts of it, whilst I'm not at all saying that it's got to be an Aboriginal only facility, that's ludicrous to even suggest that, because addiction, as Jeff said, doesn't discriminate on who you are, what colour you're from or where you're from, but how we heal will have an effect on different people. Putting us in front of psychologists and alcohol and drug specialists isn't working. You know, when we get people with lived experience and talking about the addiction process and understanding the genetic disposition, but also the lack of connection within the person and the individual and who they are and connection to the country of they're from, it plays a major basis role in healing, in the healing process.
Nothing can replace that.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
No books.
Yeah, no. That's exactly right. It's more, spiritual type connection that, Mother Earth, provides us with her beautiful healing. And, other people might have other beliefs. I myself am a Christian and am a Christian now. But anyway, yeah, I agree with what Joe said in the fact that, is it 16 bed, 17 bed? 15, excuse me, that we're going. I knew that.
15 bed facility.
I mean, I don't think that we should discriminate. That's my personal opinion. I believe that there should be identified beds for Aboriginal people, and I believe that there should be some parts of the rehab that should cater for that specific need to people, and definitely have involvement from elders in the community, mentors in the community. There needs to, I believe, to have like a pre-rehab. As I said, that young girl couldn't get into a rehab. I think this is directed at the question the lady was asking, that there needs to be some sort of commitment from the rehab and from Dubbo. If you're going to have Dubbo rehab, I believe that Dubbo has a role to play in that community services, whatever, to connect people to that rehab, support them during that time to get into rehab, as there would be limited spaces, or seek out other avenues for them to go down, but not just leave them to their own devices, where death could be a result.
I think it's important to say that non-Aboriginal people can connect with Aboriginal culture too when it comes to healing. Like, it ain't just, hey, there's that big bad black culture thing. Like, whitefellas can heal from it too. You know, so it's about sharing that story that heals as well. That's a people thing. That's a connection thing.
Yeah.
And there's proof of that on the Central Coast from the rehab I went through, you know, the Glen. It's a cultural-based rehab, but it doesn't discriminate against any culture coming into that place. And as for us, Indigenous culture is massive to us. So important non-Indigenous people as well. And that's they're healing there. Their spirits have been broken and bruised and battered, so their spirits are coming back to life as well.
Connection is the key to all healing. Connection is the key to all healing of people's brokenness.
So just in saying that, I mean, as there is limited numbers, as I just suggested, there could be I know for time, but there could be like a pre-type thing happening with the rehab to get people connected up and sorted out. Also, follow-on services. I believe that there should be like an umbrella through the rehab to connect services, to connect, collaborate with the individual to find out how they want to walk in life and progress. And work with those people as a follow-on situation, housing, parole, trials that may be coming up for different, things as well. There's some terrific Aboriginal services that are in town that work directly with drug and alcohol. They facilitate areas also that are out in the west, not just Dubbo. They travel out also, so there could be, I think we all need to connect up as well. And if we can't facilitate those people, I believe that, through the rehab, if the proper provisions were, there, we could, facilitate them somewhere else or cater to their needs.
I think as well, it's hugely important to say, I know we're running out of time, is that the programming is a working thing. The programming of what's going to be rolled out is a working thing. We need the state government to kick in to make sure it gets here.
We need the first step.
That's right.
Well, it's the third step, really.
Well, yeah, I was going to say.
It's the third step.
There are a number of steps that have been taken.
But the commitments have been made.
That's right.
Except that one.
Properly corrected. But could I just say that those things that we're looking at beyond Cyrena with other services and the rest of the community, what we are saying tonight, before the 17th of November, before the state budget, is list us in your budget. There's a business case, there's the land, there's the federal money, and we are saying this is what we need. So go to Dubbo Needs a Rehab, get online, do your pledge, sign up and support. And we are running out of time, I'm sorry to say. In the absence of any further comment or question from the floor, we might be wrapping it up. But thank you very much to everyone for being here tonight and for tuning in to this first discussion. Please go to the website. Please go to Dubbo Needs a Rehab. Please look at the business case. It is a well-authored document and it really steps you through it, and you can look at the other references in the inquiries that have already made the case. And please support what these panellists are talking about tonight. And could I just say that the panellists tonight, each of them have shared with us have been brave to share with us things that are personal and close to them, and that's what this community needs, and we're very grateful to them, and I'd ask you to please acknowledge their contribution. And with that, good night, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Dr.